Hello, welcome to Chesterartbeat. This is our interview and it's episode number 6, and we have joining us live today Mark Hancock. So Mark is a fabulous local oil painter, and I have the joy of introducing him and his realistic style. He enjoys working in a wide range of subject matter, from portraits to interior landscapes and urban street scenes. Originally from Manchester, he lived abroad for over 30 years in places including Sudan, Turkey and Brazil, and for longest of all, Madrid, which we're going to hear a little bit more about later. During this time, he was working as an English language teacher, and he's authored many books in that profession. Inspired by the light in Madrid, he took up painting again, having been a watercolourist as a youngster. So when Mark and wife Annie decided to move back to the UK 10 years ago, they looked at the map and decided that Chester would be the ideal place to live. And aren't we blessed to have him here with us? So now Mark finds inspiration for painting around the city and area. A current focus has been the canal this last year. And apart from writing and painting, Mark has always been a keen musician, playing saxophone and guitar, as well as singing and writing songs. He feels that it is the same impulse which drives improvising a line on the saxophone and placing colour and forms in an image. Music is like painting in sound, but today we're going to focus a little more on painting in oil paints, optics, reflections, and the Chester Canal, amongst other things. So without further ado, hello Mark, great to have you with us.
Hello Elizabeth, thank you for that intro.
It's all right, my pleasure, my pleasure. It's always so beneficial, I feel, to get a concept of who somebody is, because Chesterartbeat has so many artists, and that means that there are people who may have never even heard of you, let alone seen your paintings, which are fabulous, and I'm excited to showcase shortly. So one of the things that I'm really intrigued about, in that you've come to oil painting slightly later on in your career and history, is how that came about. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the inspiration of Madrid.
Yes, that's where I started oil painting in Madrid, something like 15, maybe a little bit more years ago. And it was something about the light in that city is it just evokes a feeling that you want to express, visually. And there's a lot of great painters in Spain and in Madrid. Historically, one of my favorites would be Joaquin Sorolla, who was nicknamed as the painter of light. And let me show you a picture by him so I can explain what what that means to me.
Yes, please do.
This is a picture by Joaquin Sorolla. You can see his wife there on the beach, and the light is behind them. You can see reflected right through the fabric of the parasol, and then the shadow coming towards us, and then the sunshine in the fabric of her dress, and then reflecting on the waves there. You can see why the painter is called the painter of light, because it seems like the light is a physical presence in the painting. It's as if it's emitting the light rather than being a picture of it. It seems to be pushing the light out. It's a fantastic optical illusion, which I tried to do a little bit when I started painting. So here's an example of something I did in Madrid, street near the flat, showing a flower kiosk. And here the light is actually electric light inside the kiosk and in that little lamp at the top. And I feel I'm trying to make the painting shine rather than do a picture of a light, make it the light itself. That's the inspiration I'm getting from Sorolla.
Yeah, and so here, as you said, that very realistic style, it's very clear that there are people, there's the flowers, there's the booth, it has the lights coming through. Have you ever been tempted by being either more abstract or even more photorealistic in your painting, or have you always fallen into this sort of style?
Uh, that's the style I started
Okay.
with, and if I'm not really. I did watch your interview with John Clayton the other day, and I really enjoyed the way he spoke about the appeal of abstraction, the idea of being present in the landscape
Mhm.
and taking those impressions, and rather than trying to represent what you see, represent what you feel, a kind of expressionism. Uh, I appreciate that a lot, but that's not what I've been doing myself. I don't have that particular skill set. I've always been working with the optics, really. It's the actual optics, the vision part, which more than just the expression, if you like. Um, the vision really appeals to me, and the optical illusion. And I think that's easier in a place with strong light like Madrid,
Mhm. Mhm.
because the light creates shadows, and you can use those shadows to give the impression of three dimensions, um, solidity. I think it's easier when there's strong sunlight. I remember an interview with David Hockney on the BBC where he recalls as a child in Yorkshire seeing film from California and saying being struck by the strong shadows that were created. Uh, I know exactly what he means, and he, of course, moved to California possibly for that very reason. But yes, it's easier to begin with strong light like that. Coming back to the UK means having to adapt to something much more nuanced, I think. You have to find the light where it comes from, and sometimes there's not that much.
Well, in winter specifically, I'm sure. Although I do particularly love the quality of light that we get, especially in winter on a clear day when there's not clouds coming into golden hour. You know, that 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the depths of winter in Chester is about the time where it really has long shadows. But and
That's true.
we had some very and with the sun and the heat and without many clouds in the sky, we had some very strong light. But I guess that's sometimes far and in between. I remember one Christmas when I was at university, I came home and saw 1 hour of sunlight because I counted between working because I had a part-time job. 1 hour between grey or rain. So yeah, something you have to battle with, I'm sure, if you're
Can
wanting
I,
to
can I,
use.
let me show you a picture of winter in Chester, if you don't mind. Um, this this one here is a winter scene in Duke Street, Chester. But again, it has that strong sunlight, very low in the sky, like you say, coming from the side,
Yeah.
which means that you get long shadows, which are perfect if you want to do this optical illusion of three dimensions. Take, for example, the shadows on the curtains and the windows, the shadows of the window bars on the curtains inside
Oh,
gives
yeah.
that a certain depth.
And also the lamp on the front of the house,
Yeah,
specifically moves it out and across, um, and then from the one building across the roof of the next.
yeah. So this very strong low side light at the golden hour, as you put it, is very appealing as well um, here in Chester.
And
Uh,
so,
yeah.
In terms of the nuances of the light and moving, did you find that to begin with it caused you to explore more and paint more, or that it put a pause from moving from Madrid where it was so clear and it took you a while to get started?
Well, I think you have to. I'll just switch that up a moment. You have to find the light where you can, and if you haven't got the strong sunlight, then the best place to find it, I think, is in reflections,
Okay.
because the reflections provide an alternative light source. I really enjoy reflections, as I've mentioned to you before, because they give this extra point of light in the picture. Also, they give layers to a picture.
Don't know if you noticed that the behind me, the background, the actual Chesterartbeat theme, there's the reflection. I don't know if you heard Richard talk about it, but the river. So he purposefully reflected the artworks below. And so, yeah,
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
reflections. But yeah, I can imagine, especially if the sun is only hitting from one angle, when it bounces in water or on glass, it does give you an additional light source. So do you have, let me guess, an example where you show some of your interest in reflections?
Yes, well guessed. Let me show you.
Well, I'm starting to see how this works. You very much you're going to have something to demonstrate it, and it's really useful because hearing is one thing, but seeing is another. And since you are a visual artist, oh, Chicoland, my gosh, that is an icon. That has been there at
Oh,
least
oh,
years.
you saw Chicolandia, yes. Chicolandia. That's the strong sunlight again coming from the side.
Mhm.
That's near Waitrose in Chester.
Yes,
Um,
my walk home from town as a
oh,
child.
okay.
Yeah.
But that's not the one. I was going to talk about this one here. This is in Liverpool, and talking about reflections, I wanted to talk about the layers that you get with reflections. Here, for example, you can see the surface of the glass of the chip shop here, and then
Mhm.
you can see beyond the glass to the interior with the counter and a doorway there, a light and a chair. But you can also see what's behind you along the street, um, in the reflections of the window. So you're getting a 3-in-1
Mhm.
right there, which reminds me of something from Escher. Here's a lithograph from Escher, which has the title Three Worlds, because you've got the surface of the water with those leaves on it. It's one world.
Mhm.
The fish below is another world, and then the reflections of the trees on the water, that's your third. So I find that really fascinating, and that's what I feel that this scene has a certain those three worlds right there, and that's what reflections giving here. It's not a very light day. The sun isn't really out here. It's early morning, New Year's Eve, as I remember. So there wasn't a lot of light around, but what light there is amplified by the reflection.
Mm.
I feel.
I'm particularly drawn to the fact that also you've got the reflections going down the car, particularly the blue car. So you can see the sky in the windows as well. But more than anything, something that so many people, when they first start looking at reflections, seem to miss is the fact that you see through in the shadows, but where the light is, you get that haze and that gloss over. So the fact that the door in the back of the fish and chip shop has a wiggle out of it because it's the difference between the reflection of the house behind you and its shadow and the sky. So the sky then cuts in and gives that lack of clarity through, but also how you've understood you've got much sharper shadows on the reflection of the glass, but then how you've understood it on the paintwork, I guess, for want of a better, the frame, the
Mhm.
wall, feel, and that moving from darkest to lightest and fading out compared to the crispness. It's really
Yes, I think there's a difference between shadow and reflection. Sometimes they're in different places. Sometimes the shadow is going in one direction and the reflection in another, which is a really fascinating juxtaposition as well. Sometimes you see it on the surface of water. The shadow is in one place, and the reflections are in a different angle altogether. I'll show you an example of that later.
So, in terms of the
Yeah.
optics, is it something that you studied the science of, or just studied with your eye and just know just about it and began to explore with your paintbrush? Or is it something that you had to seek to understand or looked at in other artists, like you saw it in Escher and went, oh, I want to explore that for myself? What was your initial launch point to go down this line?
I suppose I'm for studying this matter. So it really is just looking and seeing other artists' work for inspiration over however many years it's been since I started painting, really. Yeah.
Curiosity. Fabulous. Fabulous. So, in terms of reflections and optics, for anybody who is coming to either see you at the Grosvenor Atrium during Chesterartbeat, or who is admiring your work online on your Instagram, on your website, or so forth, or one of the other exhibitions they find you at, is there anything that you would like to draw their attention to?
I haven't really planned the Chesterartbeat event carefully as yet, because I'm not quite sure how it's going to work. I understand that I'll be in the atrium of the Grosvenor shopping mall under the skylight with 3 other artists, but as yet I'm not quite sure of the details of that, so I haven't planned exactly how it's going to work. But
I think they're taking that
yeah.
quite a bit more theoretically in terms of when they're viewing your work, because they can do that on Instagram and so forth too. But is there any unique thing about optics and reflections that you think would really interest them and bring them alive if they had some insights into when they look at your paintings, perhaps?
I don't know. Personally, I think you look at a painting and you respond intuitively normally. Other artists looking at this work, like yourself, you're noticing, for example, the difference on that door behind the reflection and the shadow. You're being quite analytical in the way that you look at it. Other people who are not specifically interested in painting and artwork, they're going to respond more to the feeling, I think. The atmosphere is something that, like this picture here, there's a certain atmosphere about it which is perhaps a little bit lonely, slightly desolate. That's something I get a lot from Hopper, actually. Let me show you an example from Edward Hopper here. This is House on Cape Cod. It's a certain loneliness, desolation, this atmosphere. You could analyze it optically, the way that we were just doing before with the reflections, but you might just respond to the feeling, the atmosphere. That painting that I did of the pier in Llandudno has something of that Hopper painting here. If you look back at the Hopper, it's got on one side nature and the other side the man-made world, sort of against one another. And there's something of that in this pier here with the raw power of the water and the formlessness of it, the meaninglessness of it, and then the intricate shapes of the man-made on the other side. And there's a certain loneliness. I think I would have to say that Hopper would be an influence on me, and that's an example of it.
Yeah, it's clear there, and the loneliness, because although there's so many people in the picture down the pier, them being in silhouette, them blacked out, them being far distant. But I can see why you're drawn to Hopper as well in terms of your love of strong shadow and light, because he really exhibits that that same strong light and colour. And I absolutely love what you've done here with the pier in terms of vanishing point and focal distance. That's the photographer in me coming out. But as you say, also the movement in the water and the desolation. So would you say in terms of atmospheres that you are drawn more to lonely and desolate at the moment, and that's the kind of atmosphere that you tend to portray, or do you have a selection of other atmospheres that you also convey in different works depending upon the scene and how you respond to that?
I'm not naturally drawn towards pretty and cheerful scenes, which does make Chester particularly challenging. And I'm talking about the city centre, along the side of the canal, where things are old, industrial. Then you can get your lonely desolation quite easily. But in the centre, where everything is jolly, and there's lots of appealing detail, like the black and white historical building stuff, and it's a very pretty city. So I've had a struggle adapting to central Chester, the central streets of Chester, the parts that people might think are more artistic. I have found difficult finding my sweet spot. So I've actually had to simplify radically this year. I've been trying to see if I can do the centre of Chester. Let me show you this one, for example. This is Bridge Street. I found that the only way I can really deal with it is to simplify it in, for me, is a radical way. But I don't know, for your abstract artist, there's no simplification at all here. But for me, that's as if the buildings have gone a little bit blobby, almost organic, taking away too much of the pretty detail to try and again get what I'm looking for, which was atmosphere. Yeah.
So that, I don't know what time of day you shot that at. I'm guessing it was an evening time, but it also really, with the shadows on the van and the blue tones in them, seeing that reminds me of early mornings in Chester before the shops open, when it feels more desolate as well. So obviously the warmth in the sun and so forth makes me think more of that evening light, but it does evoke that feeling of cool spring mornings, which is
actually, if I remember rightly, this was around about New Year, Christmas, New Year.
Yes.
It must have been after New Year, because I can see there's no Christmas decorations. But
Yeah.
I think it was in winter, at any rate. This winter gone. January it must have been, and it was early morning. It was early morning.
Yeah, you can feel the morning
Yeah.
sort of crispness to the light. Despite the simplification, it's blobby, I can still feel the crispness within it personally. So you've found that you want to depict the city centre, but it's causing you to change your style. How have you found in terms of natural expression and having to think more about how you depict it?
Well, my work isn't abstract expressionism. I can't just paint how I feel like some artists. It seems to be a very attractive thing to me to go to a cliff top with some big brushes and paint the canvas. That would be a wonderful day out, but it's not something I'm able to do really. Here, my form of expression is much more indirect. I'm guided by the optics, and then the expression has to find its way through in more roundabout ways.
Like through the brush strokes individually, but they're still within the buildings. So do you work from photographs, or do you work from memory of what you're seeing, or do you work in situ? What's your process in terms of getting those optics, those reflections, and taking them in? Because obviously optics change, light moves, and reflections are subject, if it's water, the wind will literally change what's being reflected in any given moment. So how do you capture that standstill moment in time personally?
Personally, I usually work from photographs. So you could say that I'm half photographer. I've taken the photograph here, and then I've made a painting based upon the photograph. So part of my art is taking that photograph. You obviously know about photography. I don't really know about photography per se, but it's definitely a stage in my creation of something like this picture here. And obviously with all of those details, I wouldn't be able to do that from memory. I have a strong sense that I can remember that scene in my mind's eye, but I wouldn't be able to sit down in front of a large canvas and recreate it from that. Maybe I should try. Maybe I should. Maybe that could be the next project. But generally, I feel the need for a reference photograph to work from. And so that's my first stage of doing a piece like this, is to spend hours hunting around with the camera in hand at odd times of day.
So if somebody happened to be out in the streets of Chester or along the canals at an odd time of day when the light's particularly pretty, keep your eyes peeled. You may spot Mark with his camera.
Yeah. You may even turn out to be a passerby in the painting, look like this person here.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But because, again, the lack of detail in the face, although they're walking towards the camera, it does give that sense of desolation, even the body language. Do you seek to communicate more of the body language that gives that desolate feel, or do you go for an accurate representation of the moment they were frozen on the photograph, whatever position they might be in? Is there an artistic license there?
Well, I want it to be believable, but I don't want it to be a witness statement for the police either. I want it to be. I don't think a crowded scene, by the way, is necessarily not lonely either. For example, the one I showed you before of the flower kiosk in Madrid had people right in the foreground, and yet I still feel a certain loneliness about that scene. So I don't think lonely is simply not having people. That's not how I feel. I think it's an atmosphere.
Yeah.
Whether or not there are people in the picture.
Also, I'm sure each one of us have had an experience sometime where we've been in a massive crowd, but yet felt alone and disconnected, because some of it's about the connection factor, isn't it? Not whether there's people, but how you, as you say, respond to the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So You've mentioned a few times that it's easier to do it with the canals and that this is a current series that you're doing. So is City Chester Centre, wow, put the words in the right order, is the centre Chester City set? You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to
I
leave
do.
that just there. Is that another series that you're simultaneously running, or is
Well,
Chester going?
Chester, this city centre picture, it, I did it, obviously the photograph I took in January, so it's this year. I've also been working on pictures like this. This is the Mill Hotel along the canal bank there, with the derelict bingo hall. And here you can see that I've moved away from photorealism a little bit here, and simplified the lines and colours somewhat, trying to get to some sort of essence, trying to pull myself a little bit away from the literal. I've also put a bit more sharpening up of the colour here. For example, this blue is a little bit too blue to be literal.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking for resonance as well of color. I find that this blue here counterbalances the reds up top in a way that's particularly satisfying. So I'm looking to create a picture which is appealing. Um,
And
through, yeah, I'm manipulating reality a little bit to make the picture somehow more appealing. And I don't mean prettifying necessarily, because it's still a rather desolate sort of scene. You know, it's not pretty, but it's appealing, I think. And another one from the canal bank is this one up in Bourton, the bridge in there. Here that you've got very early morning light in winter.
mm-hmm.
And that obviously the shape of the ripples around that recently landed duck gives a particular character to this. But I'm finding a place for purple in my life as well, as you can see here.
Yes.
I used to paint without using purple, and
Oh,
I'm going through a purple phase.
interesting. And then you've balanced that out with the sort of the sun warmth of the red and orange around the edges of the trees.
Yes,
Is
yes, that's the resonance thing that I was talking about. Yes, thank you for paying attention.
and yeah, that is a very familiar scene to myself. I love how you've even put some light in some of the windows, so people are going about their life, but yet you've got no person in the picture. So there's a human touch within the scape as well as the duck.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of this scene, this again is one of your more simplified with the buildings and letting some of the light and the shape and the colours speak even as much as the details do. Is this where a lot of your recent work is going, or have you brought any of those more realistic, detailed expressions into any of your recent work?
No, I'm experimenting this year with this simplified style. I also like I'm also working with trying to improve my composition skills. Back to this one, for example, I really like the focal point being eccentric, well away from, way to the side, the top corner here. So you get a massive area of not much going on, and then a small area with plenty going on, which is right off the edge. And it's something I've noticed in the work of other artists, which I'm trying to bring in a little bit more here, trying to vary my compositional style in my earlier pictures, like the Penny Lane fish and chip shop, the perspective is flat on, looking flat. Or that building in Duke Street, that house there, flat, looking flat on, not much depth, which is a formula which I maybe over relied on. So I'm trying to find a way of using other perspectives.
Yeah, and I love leading lines here, because you've got the line of the pavement which draws your eyes to the boat, but at the same time, simultaneously, the vegetation under the side of the bingo hall and the reflection either side of it of the road bridge that sort of frame in and lead the eye into the canal boats, the narrow boats on the top right. So both lines are drawing you in, but then you're at, well, my eyes personally bounce down from the boats along the chimney in the reflection, but then that brings me and almost points back down to the pavement, which draws my eyes to zoom back in. But because I'm coming up, I then looking at the trees above the narrow boat, and then that brings me to the bright, because obviously the eye is drawn to bits that are brighter, so the bright side of the building that's lit, and that points back down and comes along the vegetation again. So there's this constant movement as your eye is drawn within the frame, round and about. And one of the things that almost off balances it is your eye does get drawn out the frame at one moment up the chimney, but because it's so minimal, you still come back down to the bright colours of the orange on the bingo hall. So it doesn't have the awkwardness of feeling like you're being taken out of the picture, although you don't know quite what's going on because the pavement is so cut up and the building is. So it's fascinating how you are playing with your composition to keep the interest within the frame, but still having the odd moment of pointing out of it.
Spoken like a true photographer. Thank you for that analysis. I think you'll maybe never escape from this picture.
Yes, never escape. Oh, scary words. There we go. We're going to come into the Grosvenor Atrium. We're going to see your work, and we're going to be stood there so still that we become part of the landscape, and you photograph us with your next artwork, perhaps.
Look, I'll switch it off so there you can escape.
I know that one of the places that we can find you, you obviously have a website, but the internet wasn't playing ball for us with that one this morning. However, what we do have is your Instagram, which showcases some of your fabulous work. So just here, if you want to find more of Mark, then you can follow him on Instagram, but equally, likewise, so some of the works we've discussed, you can see there, and plenty more. But likewise, he also is here on Facebook, Mark Hancock MacDonald, and you can see just here some of those works, another cityscape, but more simplified this time. So if you wish to delve deeper, I don't know what's happened there, so I shall stop the share. If you wish to delve deeper, then also I'm sure, Mark, you're happy to engage with people if they wish to send you a message or comment on those posts.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other ways that would be good for people to find out more about you or contact you other than the website, which is markhancockpictures.com, which I'll pop into the bio when we write this up?
Well, obviously you could get in touch through the contact page of that website, except that the website is today suddenly not working. So, but presumably that's going to be working again soon. You can message through the Instagram or the Facebook page that you've just mentioned there. So
fabulous. Well, we look forward to seeing more of your work and exploring how it is that the mood takes you in terms of your simplified scenes and bringing more colour out. I am appreciating that you brought purple in. Purple is a favourite colour of mine. I may be biased, but yeah, thank you so much for showcasing and giving us an insight into your world and how your art is developing for yourself personally. And to everybody who's watching, we'd love to know what your take and your feeling and how you respond to these expressions. Is Chester a dear place to you as well, or is it something that you've watched from afar and it's vaguely familiar and you're appreciating it for what the painting is, as opposed to going, I have a memory attached to the scene? Yeah, drop some comments on his work and engage. Artists, I'm sure yourself included, Mark, absolutely love feedback, because it can feel quite a hidden thing when you're doing it on your own, can't it?
Absolutely,
So,
yes. It's like a message in a bottle.
wow, I love that description. Bottle, yes. And then one day you might discover that somebody has written you a note back. So,
Right,
have a
thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And let's